Welcome to Fitness Casual. We help you ditch diets and build habits no matter how busy you are. I'm Andrew Hayes, and with me is the not inflamed Kat Best.
Hi, everyone.
Kat, have you ever had any traumatic injuries where inflammation took a toll on you?
I've had a few, but I'll say one. Everyone kind of knows about my shoulder by now. So one other one was I went skydiving a few years ago. I had, I guess, like a very mild sinus infection or sinus congestion, something like that. It was kind of like in the fall. And then the moment I jumped out of the plane, both my ears popped like hard.
Oh.
And it was incredibly painful. And then I had to free fall in the sky with that, and then the chute popped, so now we're going down slowly, but all I can think about is my ears and like the amount of pain in my head. Like I didn't know. That feeling is just unbelievable. And then I got down and I was trying to play it off because I was with my boyfriend who I had just met. So I was trying to be like, cool, like I got this, it's no problem. But it was pretty wild. And then, yeah, I went to the doctor and she was like, there's crazy inflammation in your ears. I could barely hear. And then it got better, but I do think my hearing is forever slightly impaired. I'm not positive, but I do think so. But note to self, like, do not go skydiving if you have a little bit of sinus congestion. So now if I go on a plane, sometimes I'll take a Sudafed because I'm very sensitive in the ear department. So I'm like really freaked out about that happening. I hate the feeling of ears popping, you know, when you're in a plane, because it's like that feeling times 2,000 was how it felt. So that was a pretty crazy one that I think
was it excruciating pain?
It was really painful. Yeah.
Wow.
It was just like, but also the shock of falling through the air, just like a whole thing. And that was my second time going skydiving, so I would say like I had one experience that I didn't feel that, so it didn't ruin the experience, but I had already gone once before, so it's not like that was my only impression of skydiving. But definitely not something people think about.
Wow. I had never heard of that, and I just Googled it while you were telling me this. And yeah, it says it's not recommended to skydive with a cold. The changing air pressure can cause painful or dangerous issues, especially if you have sinus blockages. Wow.
There we go.
No one told me that when I went skydiving, but wow, okay. Yep. I did have a lot of like nosebleeds and stuff after scuba diving because I was a newbie, and they call it equalizing when you get the pressure out. Same as like an airplane. And like if you're a newbie, you're really bad at it, and so I was blowing really hard, and so my nose started bleeding, which is really scary. Nosebleeds can be pretty serious. So I got out of the boat and there's just blood like all over my face.
Oh my
and I
God,
asked the instructor, I was like, am I okay? He's like, oh, I think your brain is falling out of your nose, mate, or whatever. He's being a jerk about it in Australia. But I went to an ENT as well, so that's pretty serious. But I even had a broken bone. I broke my tibial plateau, which is the top of like your shin bone, basically, almost 10 years ago, and it wasn't that bad, but it was like 3 months of complications. And in short, it's a long story, but in short, the bone healed pretty quickly. But I was on crutches for so long because of the pain, and the pain was really all inflammation. It was all like muscular issues, imbalances, like all this kind of stuff. And I ended up having to go to a PT, which made my pain go away. But like being on crutches for months did nothing. The doctor was like ready to give me cortisol shots. He didn't understand what was going on. And it was just all inflammation at the end of the day. And so obviously not every broken bone is going to be resolved with some mobility work, which is another episode we'll do in a few weeks. But inflammation is crazy. How much it can impact you. Yeah.
And how fast it can come on too. I had my earlobes reconstructed. I know you don't know this.
I did not know that.
Yeah, I did. And the process of me getting my ears re-pierced after, I got an infection. And I'll say in like a 2-hour span, my ear went from like normal to the size of a golf ball. And it just swallowed up the earring I had pierced. It swallowed it. So I had to get it cut open and removed. And that was in like a 2-hour span. So that infection was like crazy, but it is wild how fast that can come on.
Is that for martial arts? The earlobe reconstruction?
No, I actually had, I guess I've always had weakish earlobes, but I had earrings that just like ripped like almost all the way straight through over time. So they had just, the hole had gotten so big. I actually did this before I got into martial arts, but yeah, I had to have a whole thing done. But it went so much longer because of the infection afterwards. So I had to like wait for that to heal, then to get re-pierced, but you know, worth it. I have like nice ears again, but that was a wild experience.
Wow. Well, that I do have questions on cauliflower ear, but we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe off air. We do want to talk about inflammation today. We've already teased just how crazy it is. I think inflammation is maybe wins the prize of ultimate buzzword in the fitness and nutrition world, I think, or medical in general. I think it's so popular on social media to just kind of throw everything into this bucket of like, could be inflammation. And we've mentioned this on previous podcasts. Lots of definitions of inflammation, can be good, can be bad. So we're going to cover a lot today and make sure if there's some actionable feedback as well. It is a very complex topic, but Kat, let's take it away. We got a lot to cover today.
Yeah, I say the word inflammation like 100 times a day. Like, it's one of the words I say the most because truly at the root of most disease or dysfunction, health issue, body weight issue, like inflammation is usually at the root of that. And inflammation can be caused by a million different things. So it is really common to talk about, and that's why our goal here is to just let everybody know like what is inflammation, what causes it, and what to do about it. So when you hear that word in the future, you kind of have an idea what's going on. So what is inflammation? First, we have acute inflammation, which is short term. It's a quick response to an injury, an infection, or some sort of foreign invader in your body. Your body is unhappy, so it's a fast onset reaction. Like my infection I got, I would say that was like a very acute response. It's usually quick, kind of resolves in a few hours to days. It's usually around the area of an injury or a bite or like something you had, and it's pretty straightforward what happened and what's going on. So that's one thing where it kind of resolves itself pretty quickly. And on the other hand, we have chronic inflammation. This is, if I'm talking about inflammation, this is what I'm talking about. It's this like really long-term, low-grade inflammatory response that persists over time without really obvious injury or infection or something you can't clearly, pinpoint exactly what's going on. And it can kind of be invisible. You probably don't know what's going on. And over time, this gets more and more harmful. So, by the time you're actually getting the symptoms of inflammation, it could be happening for years in your body. And now it's just getting to the point where you're starting to recognize it. And this, it sounds terrible. We all have probably some sort of chronic inflammations. It's just kind of how your body responds to it and the intensity of it. That really does matter. But you have to know that it's not in one location. This could be systemic, can last years, and, it's definitely not obvious at first, but over time you should start to pick up when symptoms do increase over time. And this is because on a cellular level, you are being impacted. It's causing damage, is causing tissue breakdown, dysfunction at the cellular level. So whatever started the inflammation could have nothing to do with what it evolves to over time. They could be separate things, but it's just that cascade over and over. And, it's highly correlated that inflammation has a lot to do with diseases like cancer, heart disease, diabetes, neurological conditions like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. All of that does have to do with inflammation. So I would say a lot of things are diseases that people think are completely random and they didn't do anything to deserve this. Well, maybe the inflammation started in your 20s and then finally over time, in your 50s, it kind of catches up and then you develop disease. Like, we do have to kind of think that long term. One good analogy is kind of like a kitchen fire. So you have a fire in your kitchen and then it could burn your whole house down. The fire started in your kitchen, but now it's in the upstairs bedroom closet wreaking havoc. Like, that's how chronic inflammation works, instead of just putting out the kitchen fire in the kitchen immediately. So when you have inflammation, like I just said, you have some really common symptoms that could be related to a variety of things, and these aren't always super obvious or like medical diagnoses, but things to look for would include digestive issues, bloating, constipation, irritable bowel syndrome. That's some sort of chronic inflammation that is just messing up your gut health over time. Persistent fatigue or energy crashes. That's a really common one. I know energy issues is probably the most common thing we see people struggle with, like on a universal basis. That can definitely be inflammation. Joint pain, even being like puffy face, puffy body, some sort of fluid retention's going on. Brain fog, skin issues, definitely acne, eczema, psoriasis, weight gain, or, even weight loss maybe for some people. But I would say probably weight gain and having a harder time losing fat, even if you're doing the right things. That could definitely be a symptom of some inflammation. And then, of course, we have mood stuff, anxiety, irritability, low motivation. I think a lot of people do not realize this on how it could impact your mental health pretty severely. And if your mental health is being impacted, then maybe you're not motivated to do certain things and you think you have a motivation issue, but actually maybe you just have some inflammation in your body. Most of the time we can go by symptoms to say like, all right, clearly there's some inflammation, but there is a blood marker that is often used, and that's your CRP. I'm a really big fan of all of our clients or anyone getting their CRP tested. I think it's really useful, but even if it's low, it still means you could have inflammation. You know, it's not the most perfect marker. It doesn't mean no inflammation is present, but I would say if yours is high or slightly elevated, you definitely have inflammation, because if that's able to, you know, set off that marker in your body, you definitely have something going on. And anytime you have high CRP, like, it must be addressed. You're probably not going to see it go down over time by just ignoring it. It's absolutely something that should be addressed, because here's like a fun fact. Women with higher BMI have 3 to 4 times higher CRP levels.
Wow.
So, yeah, I mean, not just the correlation between high CRP and obesity is very common, and that's something I see a lot too. When I look at blood work, usually that's something I see, you know, and usually those people with high CRP absolutely have a harder time losing weight. That's because your body's just not in the best place right now for weight loss, so we have to address the underlying inflammation.
Yeah, I'm going to point that out for a second. Inflammation, I think, is, once you understand it, which most people don't, which is fine, I didn't either, is an aha moment when it comes to functional health and functional nutrition. And so if you're not familiar with functional health, that's the type of program that we run. It's the type of nutritionist that you are, Kat, which is looking at everything together. And we don't only talk about weight loss, but I think weight loss is a very common pain point for people. And inflammation is a great aha moment to say, oh, I've been cutting calories and nothing's working. What is it? And there's 1,000 ways to look at it, but inflammation is almost always that common denominator of, well, what other choices are you making that are impacting your health? Because exactly as you said, Kat, if your body's not in the right state for that, because there's all this other stuff going on, then calories are almost irrelevant. And yes, I know there's the zealots of like, but calories in, calories out. And like, yeah, we can talk about that. But the point is, like, how you feel every morning when you wake up, the decisions you're making, you know, how your body's functioning, your nutrient absorption, like all of this stuff is tied to your inflammation. And was my story. We talked on the autoimmune episode about my restless leg and my eczema, are both tied to inflammation. And so, like, I don't know what causes my restless leg. It's not that I ate this one thing or that I made this one decision. It's that my inflammation has gone up. And it's obvious to me when I have a weekend away and I have 10 beers and eat only fried food and haven't had a vegetable in 3 days, and my restless leg come back, because there's inflammation involved. And so it is, as much as it's a blanket term, it's also a really good explanation of why maybe you're not feeling the way you want and seeing the results you want. So I just wanted to highlight that for people.
Yeah, 100%. I think inflammation is also, it's a big term, so we're going to get into some of the causes, but I just want to also point out, if you don't know the exact cause of your inflammation, it's okay. You don't need to address it. It's great if you can take a look at your life and see what could possibly be going on, but the way that inflammation cascades in the body over time and just creates chaos, and year after year, like, maybe you're not going to get to the root cause. That's okay. But these guys should be ones to take a look at. So first, we have chronic stress. Of course, always something we're talking about. We did that podcast on stress, so if you haven't listened to that, go back, because that, you know, we get way more into it. But anytime you have stress, cortisol is elevated. Cortisol can increase inflammation. This could be a poor night's sleep, you know, no work-life balance. You work really hard and you have no time for self-care or personal health. Mental health issues definitely can increase your cortisol. I would say even lack of like a life purpose. If you kind of, you know, have loneliness or you are depressed and you don't enjoy your life, like, these are actual stressful things. Financial stress, like, that's a big one, you know, and these are all things that I'm sure everyone listening can be like, oh yeah, I have a little bit of that. Well, like, to what extent that may be, this could be increasing inflammation in your body. And one I do want to mention is unresolved trauma or nervous system dysregulation. if you are in chronic fight or flight from some experience you had, whether it was in your childhood or last week, if you are not addressing how that makes you feel or how that's impacting your actions, your emotions, your coping mechanisms, that really can lead to, chronic inflammation. And that's why people who went through really difficult things or atrocities in their childhood tend to have struggle with mental health or physical health when they get older. So there is a connection there. There's some really good research on this topic, but it's definitely something I just wanted to call out because, if your nervous system, if you can't ever calm down, even when you should, if you're laying down flat and you should be relaxed and you can't, that is something that's definitely could be leading to your inflammation. And then we have poor nutrition. This is probably the biggest one that everyone can relate to and probably has felt immediate effects of. But if you're eating processed foods, refined sugars, hydrogenated oils, a lot of alcohol, all of these things do trigger low-grade inflammation. These are not foods that your body likes. Your body does a fantastic job at dealing with it and just making it work, but it's not something that your body likes. And to me, anything that causes low-grade inflammation in the body, probably not the best thing, but not a huge deal. Unless you're eating this all day, every day, and it makes up the majority of your diet year after year, this is absolutely going to cause some issues, and that's the standard American diet. Unfortunately, it's just very pro-inflammatory. Food sensitivities are also really stressful. So a food that may be a healthy food, if you just have a sensitivity to that thing, this causes inflammation, and symptoms are not always obvious. I think a lot of people think of a food allergy, they get hives, they go into anaphylactic shock, that's where you need to be to have a food allergy, but a sensitivity is on a whole different planet of, it could be bloating that you get right away, or maybe you don't feel anything and you get some brain fog, or 3 days later you get a skin rash. It could be very small, but if you have a sensitivity, it's creating inflammation in the body. And I don't care how healthy the food is, on paper. If it's not working for you, it's not working for you. So you always have to pay attention to how you feel when it comes to certain things, or maybe accept that for some people, you may have to eliminate certain foods that you really like, even if you think they're healthy, in order to feel better, which is, a whole different topic, but it really is fundamental. If we remove inflammatory food or a trigger food, maybe you could feel a lot better, gut health gets better, and then you get more resilient over time. But it does play a big role. And then obviously a low fiber diet. It impacts your gut health. Your gut and your immune response are closely linked, and your immune response has a lot to do with inflammation. So if you have poor gut function, it's going to impact your body's ability to heal or attack what it needs to attack. That process will probably get downgraded a little bit to where inflammation can accumulate a little bit easier in the body. So definitely something to always consider. We're always talking about fiber and how, underrated it is, but that can definitely contribute to inflammation. And I would say the fastest thing I notice with people who have low fiber is they have more symptoms when it comes to gut issues or body pain or headaches or whatever. And then there are hidden internal stressors. So these don't always show up on your standard blood work or feel super dramatic. It's not obvious that you have these things going on, and they do just contribute to that low-grade stress over time. Obviously, gut dysbiosis, I was just talking about the gut, but if you have an imbalance of good versus bad bacteria in your body, could contribute, and that is an internal stressor. We have toxin exposure, so heavy metals, pesticides, mold. These overload your liver and the immune system. If you have mold toxicity, you're not going to know. You're not going to be like, oh, it's the mold. People don't figure out it's mold until usually years later. Mm-hmm. They have to go through an extensive process of eliminating things just to find out it is mold. And this absolutely will wreak havoc in your body. Heavy metals too much mercury or things like that. And they're also hard to pinpoint because for metals, you have to do a hair analysis. You have to cut off a chunk of your hair, send it to a lab, and they look at it. There's no way to look at metals in your blood. You have to do the hair. It's just more effective to see it over time. So that's a more complicated one, I think, goes really under the radar. Or it's when people finally get to a functional doctor and have gone down the chain of stuff. They finally get that answer years later. And at this point, more inflammation has accumulated and it gets really, really hard to resolve. But Those are some big ones. And if you've ever met anyone with like a mold issue, I have, it is wild how much it impacts their body. Like it can be, it's so bad. And usually it's just a home they moved into, just something that it's not in their control to really change either. It sucks.
Yeah.
And then we have infections. So infections, you know, they could be chronic, viral, or bacterial infections. These do suppress your immune system. H. pylori is something that can be in the gut. I would say a lot of people have it, not necessarily at too high of a level, but if you have too much H. pylori in your body, it can cause a lot of other issues, and it's hard to diagnose, or it's hard to figure out what's going on, and you have to go see a doctor who like does that test or really cares, or test your stool to figure that out. But there are like little infections in your body that are not massive, but they're just altering everything over time. This can definitely, you know, cause some inflammation. So, you know, while these are small and things you may have never heard of or never think about, they definitely can play a role. And then the last one we have would be nutrient deficiencies. This is big. I would say most people have some sort of nutrient deficiency, probably myself too, but low magnesium, vitamin D, zinc, omega-3s, B vitamins especially, these all impact your body's ability to detox and repair itself. So if you just have a deficiency in one area, it's going to be a stress on your body. Your body's trying to do what it can to make up for that, but usually it just means your body is not as resilient as it could be. And this is where diet comes in, or you could get some blood work or testing just to figure out exactly what's going on. But I can't tell you how many people we work with who have low vitamin D, who've known they have low vitamin D for a long time, and they don't do anything about it because it's kind of like, my vitamin D is low, whatever. But they don't realize what that means, or, you know, no one's really checked the supplement they're on to make sure it's working and all that. But these things can, you know, play a huge role. So think about that, see if any of that resonates with you, and if none of it does, I'm sure there could be other things, but for the most part, I think people will fall into some of those buckets.
Yeah, I think that's a really good, the last point you mentioned about not taking action, or maybe just not thinking it's a big deal. This is a really good point. Human beings are resilient creatures. We have met people in pretty poor health, and obviously we try to help them, who still go about their day. They have very legitimate professions. They're doctors, they're lawyers, they're whatever, but they're miserable on the inside, on the outside. They have all kinds of symptoms, but they're still operating, right, every day, because then people don't just give up. Like we have survival instincts. And so I think inflammation is really important to recognize that you could be feeling a lot better every day than you do today. And if you are impatient with your kids, or you feel really disillusioned with your career, or you're fighting with your spouse, I mean, I know it sounds extreme, but like these could all be signs of you not taking care of yourself, and now they're manifesting in other areas of your life. You brought up nutrient deficiencies. I think omega-6 to omega-3 is something that a lot of people hear but don't understand. Our standard American diet really high in omega-6, like chicken, oils, things like that. We all eat too much of it, and it's supposed to be in balance, which is why people take omega-3 supplements, which is a conversation for another day. But if you're not eating a lot of fish and you're not eating a lot of the right things to balance out this diet, you are running around highly inflamed. And then we also eat processed foods. We eat cows who eat corn, and chickens who don't free range, and they have inflammation too. And then we're absorbing it. And it's like now all of a sudden your life is in shambles, all of because you are not eating the right nutrients or in the right balance. And this is why I love what we do, Kat. And this is why, like, I literally quit my job to teach other people just how amazing this is. The reason I wake up every day feeling incredible is not because I'm like have some amazing genetics. It's because we've worked on all this stuff, right? You and I together, you are my coach. And like, I figured out just how much this is all connected. And so we're about to go through some solutions, but I just want to raise awareness of like, this is not for the health optimizer who has like a little bit of constipation every couple weeks. Like could be the missing piece to why you feel like garbage every week and why you hate your job or whatever else. And I don't know, Kat, you think I'm being extreme, or you agree with this?
I fully agree. I totally agree. I heard this term the other day that I loved, and it's called micro poisoning. So it's like the little thing. I'm sorry, but the world we live in is just incredibly toxic, like literally toxic to our bodies. So it's these little things over time, small over time, just add up to cause more inflammation. So and everything from the plastics to all the cleaning sprays, like everything, gas in the car, the fumes, pollution, like all of these things are actually like hard for our bodies to handle with. Some people's do better than others, but it's just an accumulation of stuff over your entire life, like your whole lifetime,
Yep.
Is something to look at. All right, so now that we know you have inflammation, how do we...
If you're listening to this podcast, you have. If you're a human being, you have it. But that's okay. We're here to help.
Yes. How do we reduce it? Prioritizing an anti-inflammatory diet is by far the most important thing. Anything else I'm about to say, I don't care. If you are not working on your diet, you're not going to get the most benefits. Like, you really should just try your best. You don't need a perfect diet, but just slightly better than what you're doing. That will set your body up to a place where it actually has the resources, like AKA food, energy, to do what it needs to do to fight the inflammation. So you should just try eating nutrient-dense foods as much as possible. Unprocessed foods, close to, like, single ingredient, as close to the original form as you can get it. But I think the 80-20 rule is fine. If you're doing that 80% of the time, doesn't need to be 100%, 20%, you could have your junk food, alcohol, whatever. But if you look at your diet, most of the time, it should be better quality foods. This is not something you're going to fix right away. This could take months and months to get up to speed with, but you're setting the intention, you're trying, like, it's only going to get better over time the more you stick with it. But you cannot just be living off of junk food and fast food and all of that and think you're going to feel good. It's just not going to happen. Omega-3s, like Andrew mentioned, they're highly imbalanced, so that's a good place to focus on. Salmon, sardines, flax, walnuts, proven impact on inflammation if you eat more omega-3s. Like a fish oil supplement also could be handy here. And, there's a lot of research on this topic if you're curious, but that's a good one. If you're like, I don't know what to eat, focus on omega-3s. That could go a long way. And then second, I would say focus on antioxidant-rich foods, your berries, dark leafy greens, beets, super colorful vegetables. These antioxidants help your body fight free radicals. So it's like helping to fight the stress of the inflammation, and this helps you at a cellular level to be eating these foods. This is probably my number one argument of why people should eat vegetables. I know, and it's like we've had this conversation before of like how important are vegetables, especially if you're hitting fiber. It kind of makes you go, well, I'm hitting my fiber. Why do I need these?
Yep.
Well, that's where I go to antioxidants, vitamins, minerals. Like, these foods do wonders for your body that other foods won't necessarily do. So I just think they're always good to load up on. And then last, we have high fiber foods. We've talked about fiber a lot. Super beneficial for blood sugar and gut health and all of that, but fiber has a profound impact on inflammation as well. So chia seeds, avocado, beans, lentils, fruits, veggies, all of that is good to load up on. And a lot of things that are antioxidant rich will also have fiber. So those are kind of, you get both in one shot, but those are things you want to start looking for. And I would say if you're not interested in removing junk from your diet, don't. Just try adding more good stuff. If you're not ready to do that yet, then let's just try adding more good things, and that can help, and that's a really good starting point to have. But again, omega-3s, antioxidants, fiber. Just try to have some of those every single day. That can definitely help. And then next we have balancing out your blood sugar. So actually, blood sugar spikes can cause inflammation in the body. So to balance blood sugar, we need to have protein at every meal, ideally fiber and fats at every meal, but if not, just throughout the day, so you're at least getting enough. But protein should be at every meal. And avoid eating carbs naked or on their own without any protein, fat, or fiber present. And then have food before coffee. Those are 4 simple things to do that really can help balance out your blood sugar. And I would say if you wanted to just start with one, like protein at every meal, I think that's a really good place. But the majority of people have blood sugar spikes also are normal. That happens. It's a natural thing to happen, but we can reduce the amount that they happen, and it's just by controlling your nutrition a little bit. But we're not saying you should never have blood sugar spikes. It's just you want to do your best to make sure they happen minimally, and it's not really happening because of your diet. If you have a workout, it's going to spike your blood sugar, or when you get up in the morning, maybe something would change. But when it comes to food, like the choices you make to eat, you have a lot of control there. So I think that's a good one to focus on.
And just a side note, CGMs, the continuous glucose monitoring, are becoming more accessible for the everyday consumer without working with your doctor or like an endocrinologist. And Kat, I think you agree with this. Like, I generally don't recommend that because of what you outlined. I think blood sugar spikes are natural. And I think even if you're eating a well-rounded meal with vegetables and steak and potatoes, you can see a blood sugar spike. And that doesn't mean that you should not eat potatoes. I do think that sometimes, as much as diabetes is a crisis, I think looking at your blood sugar on a daily basis is just going to scare you and really not something you should worry about, assuming you're making the correct choices with how to create a well-balanced meal.
Yeah, I kind of seeing a trend of people becoming like fearful, like incredibly fearful of a blood sugar spike, like to the point where it's getting like a little disordery. And that's where I would say, like, if you haven't mastered the basics or you don't like your body aesthetics and stuff, not a good, you don't slap on a glucose monitor. I feel like there's other things to focus on, weight training, like so many other things. But if you're curious, it could be good. I'm kind of curious about trying one, just also from a place of like pure experimentation and curiosity, not because I'm going to really let it dictate things, but I'm a little curious. I just don't know how attached the little monitor is, because I think in jiu-jitsu it's going to fly right off. So that's my issue.
That's
I
true.
don't,
Well, I think they stick it in there, right?
I don't know how, and I would hate for that to like keep coming out. So I don't know. I got to look into that. But yes, I agree. Don't do that unless you've mastered a lot of other things first and you're just being curious.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one I think is one a lot of people don't think about, but your detoxification pathways need to be supported and they need to be functioning to reduce inflammation. Your liver, your kidneys, and your lymphatic system are always trying to do this. They're trying to detox, but they need resources to do their job, and that's where you come in by eating the foods, living the lifestyle to support detoxification. It's incredible how our bodies can detox toxins all day long without us thinking about it. It's naturally happening, but when people start to get a little sluggish, maybe they're constipated, they're not breaking a sweat, they're living sedentary lifestyles, your detoxification will be impaired, which means you could accumulate more inflammation. So simple things to do: drink enough water. You got to be hydrated. I would say electrolytes would be great, but you need to just be drinking enough water, in order to have good detoxification pathways, especially when it comes to peeing enough. If you use the bathroom like 2 to 3 times per day, you are not using it nearly enough to be detoxing properly, I would say. I don't know the optimal amount of times you should be going to the bathroom, but we want your pee to be like a light yellow, not all the way clear, not a dark yellow, but like a light yellow. That means you're in a good hydrated state. So if you don't even want to care about how many ounces of water you're drinking, at least look at the color of your urine. That can be really helpful.
That's right.
Cruciferous vegetables are really good for supporting the liver. I try to make a point to have these throughout the week if I don't pay much attention to other veggies. I'm trying to look for the broccoli, the cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, arugula, kale. These do help support your liver, so I think it's a good idea to have 1 serving per day. It's pretty easy if you're eating a couple servings of veggies. Just make one of these this. You can also roast them. It's really easy to get a bunch of cruciferous veggies in. But if you're like, oh, I want to eat more veggies, what do I focus on? Definitely those ones. 1+ servings per day is a good place to start. And then for breaking a sweat, sauna is fantastic for detoxification. It's going to make you sweat, opens up the pores a little bit. To stimulate your lymph, you could dry brush, or I think walking even stimulates lymph a little bit.
Nice.
But dry brush is kind of like a fun thing, especially if you're into skincare. It feels really good, and that's something you can do. And it's really just making your skin just, that biome on your skin, it can just pass things through a little bit better, and you can just detox better. This makes a big difference. This is why lymphatic drainage is a thing. When people do have a lot of inflammation, like after a surgery or some operation, like there's a reason massage and tissue work is really important, because it just helps get that blood flow, which helps your body anti-inflame. And you also need to...
I do love a sauna, and I've just noticed a big change in how I feel by doing it regularly.
Yeah.
And it's also my favorite thing. I think everyone should have in their toolkit, like, what is your go-to exercise when you don't want to work out? Maybe it's foam rolling, maybe it's stretching, whatever. And for me, it's like, all right, I'm going to go to the gym, which has a sauna, and I'm just going to do the sauna. Or maybe I'll do 5 minutes of workout and then go to the sauna. And sometimes I will end up getting more exercise in, and sometimes I'll just go right beeline for the sauna. But either way, it's a good example of like, you are working on your health and you are getting more fit. You're going to feel better. You don't have to necessarily go grind out 7 different exercises and 3 reps and three sets of 10 reps and all of that, you can still do something to make yourself more optimally healthy, to continue that flywheel of feeling good. And I think sauna is such a popular one. So I just wanted to call that out. It's one of my personal favorites.
I love the sauna. And I think there's even people who, if they don't do anything, but they just do the sauna more, their like cardiovascular health gets better.
Yeah.
Like a lot of things improve just by sitting in the sauna, which I would say is easy. It's relaxing. Yes, it's hot, but also, side note on the sauna temperature, it needs to be hot enough. This is an issue I have with my personal gym sauna. It's not hot enough. It's really not, and it bothers me. But you need it to be hot enough to get the benefits. If you're chilling and you're not really sweating and it's comfortable, I would say it's probably not hot enough. Infrared saunas are different. Those can be lower temperature, and they use a different mechanism to heat the thing. But if you're in a traditional sauna, I think you just need to make sure it is hot enough if you have control over the temperature. And I think about 20 minutes, like 15 to 20 minutes is ideal. I'll sit in mine for like 30 because it's not hot enough. But you should be, and I think also you kind of want to get to a point where you start getting a little uncomfortable. You're a little antsy. Yeah. You kind of are getting itchy. You just want to move. You're kind of like hoping someone opens the door a crack so you get the nice gust of cold air. That means you're probably in a good place for actually getting the benefits of it.
That's why the sauna hat is popular now. Have you seen the sauna hat?
Oh, no.
It's all the rage at the rec center that I go to. First of all, there's always someone in there with a spray bottle shooting, like misting the sensor to make it hotter, which you're not supposed to do because it definitely breaks it, but it does, I think, would solve the problem that you're outlining, so people do it. But now the sauna hat is very popular. It looks very silly. It's just like a little piece of felt. It looks like something you would make from Michael's craft store. But it's supposed to, I was asking someone about it. I need to fact check whatever the random person next to me in the sauna said, but he's like, it keeps your capillaries from like getting overheated because your head, I think, is such a source of heat, which I do know is true, that it's the first thing to go, and then your body starts to tell you like, get the hell out of here, it's too hot. And so if you cover your head, the rest of your body can take more heat while your head stays like a little less of the direct heat. From what I understand, I haven't looked it up. I will circle back on this to anyone who cares, but that's why the sauna hat is popular, to really extend the duration in the sauna. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, I didn't know. I'd never heard about that. Mine, I feel it first in my toes because I lay on my back with my legs up. So my big toe, that's what gets hot first. And then, it started to get squirmy, but I'm like, it's working. Okay, so next thing we have is moving your body, but not too much. Movement is really important, for your body and health and all of that stuff. But if you do too much, you definitely can be causing more inflammation. Actually, DOMS, or when you get really sore, that is inflammation. That is absolutely, I would say, an acute inflammatory response. It does not last that many days. If it's not going away, you have a much bigger issue. But that should get better. It actually peaks 48 hours after. So it's not the next day, but the second day you'll probably feel the worst, and then it should get better. But that is what's going on essentially. When you work out hard, break down muscle, it repairs. But if you're stuck in that state for chronically, so you're either always sore when you work out, which some people, that's their goal, which is a very bad goal if you're working out. Like, you should not be trying to get sore. Actually, for me, like, I'm actually really sore right now in my legs, like uncomfortably sore. And I'm like, I went too hard. Like, I don't like this feeling. I didn't need to do that 4th set. I should have stopped at 3. But you need to, like, soreness is not the goal at all. And the more you do excessive HIIT workouts or cardio, like lots of cardio, even endurance, just long endurance stretches, if you're not recovering, this will just spike cortisol and create more inflammation. So you don't need to be doing a super high intensity workout for this to happen. It can just be, prolonged periods where you're just not getting enough recovery over time.
Yep.
And if that is you, there's nothing wrong with just switching to really low to moderate exercise for a period of time. Do walking, take yoga class, maybe do like light strength training, not going super heavy, but just trying to get some blood flow, not something that gets you sore. And you can just do that over time. It will probably very quickly lower your inflammation, and then you can kind of get back to it, but just be careful. But on the other hand, a sedentary lifestyle is also highly inflammatory, and it's not good. But if you're training like an Olympic athlete, also not good. So it's that fine line. Everybody has to just know what makes sense for them. But if you are high achieving, you like working out, and you find joy in that, you like working hard, it's really easy to just be slightly over the edge all the time. But because you have healthy relationship with it, you enjoy it, you're having fun, or it's a hobby sport. Like I'm kind of in that camp where it's like I'm doing something I really like, but sometimes you gotta like, you know, push the brakes a little bit just to let your body heal, because over time, stress fractures, injury, like that can cause all sorts of things. Marathon runners usually have horrendous gut health because their gut health has just deteriorated over time from all that running. You know, anytime if you do an activity and you find yourself getting diarrhea in the middle of it, probably some inflammation going on, and that does happen to athletes or, you know, athletic people. So just a good thing to keep in mind. And then last one is sleep. Of course, sleep is so super important. We can't not mention it, because if you get one bad night of sleep, it raises your inflammation. Just one bad night, you know, even in healthy adults, you could have the healthiest diet, you know, everything is going well, but if you are not getting enough sleep, it will increase inflammation. We probably all know how it feels to have a few bad nights of sleep. You feel pretty terrible the next day. And just imagine, like, over time, what that's doing. People are really good at kind of talking themselves out of it or just getting through the day. Caffeine, whatever, let's get through it. Your body's incredible in that way, but it is making up, like, something in your body is giving up for that to happen. So we should aim for probably 7 to 9 hours per night. Know your number. I don't think there's one number that works for everyone, but just know what works best for you. But it's probably not less than 7 hours unless you have that gene.
Yeah, you're in the less than 1%. I doubt it. I wouldn't use that as an excuse. I would err on the side of trying to sleep more. You're probably wrong and high stressed and have bad habits if you can't sleep for 7 hours. Sorry
Definitely.
to say.
And I think the people I hear talk who do have that gene, they are like truly fine on 4 hours. Like they're not trying, they're not pretending they're not. They're just, and these are usually people who are in like special operations. They have crazy jobs to capitalize on this. So if you have this, you'd probably know by now. And it's probably not you. But you should also keep consistent sleep and wake times, go to bed and wake up at the same time, even if it's on a weekend and you don't want to get up as early. But if you go to bed earlier, it does get much easier. But sleep is absolutely imperative. I think maybe 2 things on this list. If you just eat better quality food and get more sleep, you will do massive amounts to improve your inflammation. But I think a lot of people go right to taking a supplement or doing other things that are just less impactful because it's easier. And sometimes to address inflammation, we have to do things that are hard and change our lifestyle and really address the things you do that aren't working out for you and make those changes over time. And when it comes to weight gain, this is also, I think, important to know. Inflammation is not a result of weight gain. It's usually the cause that blocks fat loss.
Right.
So it's absolutely something that can get in your way when you're trying to lose fat. But because you have inflammation, or you're not just gaining weight because you have inflammation, not necessarily. You know, there's definitely a relationship there. But if you're overweight and you're looking for something to blame, don't blame your inflammation. Blame what you're doing to cause your inflammation, and that's a good starting point to look at.
Yeah, it's very much a chicken or the egg thing, which is something that we help solve in the program, of course, but if you're just listening and trying to do this on your own, every step is going to make a difference. And so just reducing, you know, the amount of fried foods or oils, or improving your omega-3s in your diet, or getting a little bit more sleep will help you feel just a little bit better the next day, to do maybe one more thing we've outlined today, and then so forth. And it's hard, right? It's hard if you're trying to lose weight and nothing's working. It's hard to start making changes like adding vegetables that you don't think are going to matter, but it really does impact it. And I want to add one more thing on that note, Kat. There is a trend, I think this is more in the fitness space, like fitness professionals and people who work out every single day, which is, I think, generally not the people listening to this podcast, but there is a trend of, I'm quoting now, like fitness people of calories are the end all be all. And it is absolutely possible to eat nothing but junk food and get ripped and like look good on the beach. Like that's science. I know people who do it, and they pound energy drinks and they eat Chinese food and whatever else.
Are they men? Is it a man?
Yeah, and they're mostly men, but you know, women can do this too. And it is like, there's a very famous influencer who I won't call out, who's like, I hit my protein goal and my calorie goal and nothing else matters. Like, I'm just pounding Twizzlers to get calories. And it's like, okay, do you look good with your shirt off and you're selling fitness programs doing Twizzlers? Then yes, I'm not going to disagree with you there. But this entire podcast episode is all of the other things that can happen to you short term and also long term, which we didn't really get into, like diseases, chronic diseases, which you kind of mentioned at the beginning of like, that's what happens when you ignore this stuff. Inflammation is so key to actually being healthy. And if you haven't listened to our episode from about a month and a half ago about what it actually means to be fit, at no point did we say you are the best looking body on the beach. Like that really has nothing to do with it. And I know, Kat, we're in the space. We know lots of professionals who compete and use their body as their business card and wherever else. And like they probably are inflamed up and down, you know? And so like, I don't recommend that. Just because you have a six pack or something doesn't mean you're healthy. I think inflammation is really one of the best areas to focus on to actually feel good every day.
Definitely. I don't want to say annoyed, but I get disappointed anytime I see a fitness professional, coach, whatever, someone who knows what they're talking about well enough to be like, oh, I'm going to eat a Big Mac every day and lose 20 pounds. Like, watch me on my journey of eating shit and looking better.
Yep.
Cool, that may work for you, but for the majority of people who are taking this advice, it might not work for them. And that might, create all sorts of issues. So I think that's just wildly irresponsible. I think the message is that you don't have to eat perfectly to lose fat, but I think encouraging junk food or the 1 meal a day diet where it's like just binge eat 3,000 calories in one sitting, pizza, whatever it takes, get your calories, like that is just, or that might work until it doesn't, and I just think it's a bummer when I see that, because I think it's not helping the people who really need the help, because they're not the bodybuilder
I agree.
who, has good muscle mass and all of that stuff. I think it's just, don't listen to those people if they come across your page.
Right. And if
they're
you are
not
dealing
being
with,
honest.
Right. And maybe that works for them because they have found their optimal diet. But if you are dealing with being tired, brain fog, joint pain, whatever, like you probably have some inflammation issues to work through, and you should focus on anything other than calories probably to start.
Yeah, and just try to feel good. At the end of the day, like I always talk about that, I just want to feel good. I try not to eat things that make me feel bad, and I kind of don't complicate it much more beyond that, because I've gotten to a point where that's my radar. Like if I don't feel good, I then look at what I changed, but that's what I just want to feel like. And anytime I don't, usually an inflammation increase. And I don't get mad at myself or be like, oh, I'm bad because I have inflammation, but it just is an opportunity to explore, figure out what it is, and then try to do things or change your habits to make it better. And that feels good, builds confidence. And that's all.
That's right. Anything else we didn't cover?
I think we covered most of it. This is a humongous topic. I feel like we could do a lot of subtopics on this one, but I think this covers the basics.
Yeah, we're going to have a little inflammation guide actually recapping a lot of the stuff you've talked about, and that will be exclusively for our All to Life community, which is free. So you can join that in the show notes. It's the All to Life community on WhatsApp. And then you can get more amazing tips from Kat on Instagram at CatBestWellness. And you can follow me on Instagram at AndrewHayesLife. And keep listening to the pod. Thanks for all the support, everybody. We'll see you for the next one.
Thanks, guys.